The night the power flickered across the whole ridge, something shifted inside him, though he wouldn't have admitted it aloud. Anyone watching could have mistaken the moment for a simple outage, but for Kalen Varel, it felt like the universe drawing a quiet breath. He stood on the dim porch of the research cabin, staring out at the forest wrapped in silver moonlight. And then he saw her, Lyra Kalen, walking up the gravel path with a lantern in one hand and a look that said she carried too many thoughts for such a small frame. She always moved like she was balancing invisible worlds on her shoulders. Kalen didn't know it yet, but this night would become the beginning of everything he had never dared to imagine. The wind pushed softly against the trees as Lyra reached the steps. Her lantern cast a warm glow over her cheeks, softening the sadness she tried to hide. "Lost power too?" she asked, voice gentle, breath misting in the cool air. He nodded, though the truth was that he had barely noticed the outage. The generator hummed inside, and the stars were bright enough to guide anyone. But Lyra's presence shifted everything around him, the way she always did without trying. "You look like you've been standing out here forever," she said, trying to mask concern with a teasing tone. "Maybe I was waiting," Kalen replied, surprising himself with how true the words felt. Lyra paused at that, her eyes catching his in a way that made the quiet night feel suddenly fragile. She had a gift for listening without speaking, a quiet kind of attention that made the world settle. He stepped aside, letting her into the cabin. The door creaked softly behind them, sealing in the faint warmth from the emergency lanterns. The space felt smaller than usual with her inside, though not in a way that made him want to step back. If anything, the closeness felt overdue. Lyra placed her lantern on the table. "I only came to check if the equipment was stable," she said, "but honestly, I needed to get out of my place." Callan's heart tightened. "Rough evening?" She nodded. Too many memories in that tiny room. Too many thoughts that don't want to stay quiet. He knew that feeling well. He knew her well, better than he had let himself admit. They had worked together for months at the remote observatory, miles away from the nearest town, surrounded by sky and silence. It was easy to grow close in an environment like that, but harder to name the closeness, especially when feelings came with risks. Callan poured warm water into 2 cups, adding a bit of lemon rind. Lyra cupped hers between her hands, letting the heat seep in. For a long moment, neither spoke. Outside, the forest whispered, brushing the cabin like a secret that wanted to be shared. "What were you thinking about when I walked up?" she finally asked, settling into the worn chair near the window. Callan leaned against the counter, arms crossed loosely. "You." She looked up, startled, but not upset, more like she had been suspecting it and wasn't sure she was ready to hear him say it. "Kalen," she murmured, almost a warning, almost a plea. He didn't move closer, but the air between them shifted all the same. "You don't have to say anything," he said softly, "but sometimes I think we're both walking around pretending we don't hear the same thing." She lowered her gaze, tracing the rim of her cup. "I don't know if I'm ready to hear it. I don't know if I can handle losing something before I even hold it." The vulnerability in her voice slipped under his skin. "You won't lose me," Kalen said, surprising himself again with how certain he felt. Lyra exhaled slowly. "You don't know that." He stepped forward, carefully, gently, until he was standing just a few feet from her, close enough to see the way the lantern glow caught the flecks of gold in her eyes. "Then stay here tonight," he said, before he could talk himself out of it. "Not because of the power outage, not because you need a distraction. Stay, because you don't have to go through all of this alone." Her breath caught. His heart raced. For a moment, it felt like the entire forest was holding its breath with them. Lyra looked up, eyes shimmering with something between fear and longing. "Kalen, are you sure?" And he was, more than he had been about anything in a long time. But her answer was still unspoken. The silence that followed felt delicate, like the night itself leaned in to hear what she would choose. Lyra didn't move at first. Her fingers curled a little tighter around the warm cup, grounding herself as she tried to steady her thoughts. Kalen waited, steady and patient, though inside his pulse thudded harder than he wanted to admit. He wasn't used to letting emotion lead, but something about Lyra had always made him braver than he intended to be. She finally lifted her gaze, letting it rest on his face as though searching for any trace of hesitation. There wasn't any. "I don't want to be a burden," she whispered. "You aren't," he said, voice calm but certain. "You never could be." Her expression softened, a fragile tenderness breaking through the guardedness she kept so carefully in place. Still, she hesitated, and he understood why. Both of them worked in isolation half the year, relying on each other in ways most people never had to. Feelings here weren't simple. A misstep could change everything. "I'll stay," she said at last, voice so quiet the lantern flame almost swallowed the sound. "But only if you promise something. Anything. That this doesn't change what we already have, unless it's supposed to." Kalen's breath eased out slowly. "I can promise honesty. Nothing else would be fair to either of us." She nodded, accepting that answer, even though it didn't offer guarantees. Then she set her cup down and stood, stretching her arms slightly as if releasing some invisible weight she had carried all evening. Kalen guided her toward the sitting area, where a small couch faced the darkened window. The forest outside looked peaceful now, washed in silver moonlight. The outage had turned the whole ridge quiet, but it wasn't the unsettling kind of quiet. It felt almost welcoming. "Do you want a blanket?" he asked. She smiled faintly. "Only if you're already using one." "I wasn't," he said, draping a soft, worn blanket across the couch. Lyra sat down, tucking one leg beneath her. The lantern beside them cast gentle shadows, turning the moment warm and safe. Kalen joined her at the other end, careful to leave enough space so she didn't feel pressured. Even so, the closeness felt unmistakable. For a while, they said nothing at all. Just the two of them breathing in the same soft glow, while the night hummed quietly outside. After a while, Lyra spoke. "You asked what kind of evening I had. It wasn't exactly a bad one, just overwhelming." He shifted slightly toward her. "Want to talk about it?" She ran a hand through her dark hair, letting it fall over her shoulder. "I got a message from home. My mother found some old recordings my father made before he passed. She sent them to me without warning. I wasn't prepared." Kalen's heart tightened. "Lyra, I'm so sorry." She shook her head gently. "It's all right. I just wasn't expecting the memories to feel so sharp. I played one of the recordings, and suddenly it felt like I was right back in that old house, trying not to fall apart." He listened closely, absorbing every word. "I didn't know where to put all of that emotion," she continued softly, "so I walked, and somehow I ended up here." "You ended up exactly where you needed to be," he said. Her eyes shimmered, gratitude mixing with something deeper. "Thank you for not pushing, for just letting me be messy." "You're not messy. You're human." The compliment hit her harder than he expected. She blinked back the spark of emotion, and before she could fully hide it, a single tear slipped down her cheek. She wiped it away quickly. "Sorry, I'm just—" "You don't have to apologize to me," Kalen murmured. The air grew warmer, quieter, more intimate without crossing any lines. It was simply two hearts finding a little more courage. Lyra shifted slightly, moving the blanket so it draped across both of them. The gesture was small, but it sent a gentle ache through him. Hopeful, fragile, real. The room felt softer now, like a safe pocket carved out of the night. "Kalen?" she whispered. "Yes?" "If I fall asleep here, will you stay nearby?" He gave her a small, steady smile. "I'm not going anywhere." Her shoulders finally relaxed, the tension she had carried dissolving as she leaned just slightly toward him, close enough that he could feel the warmth of her presence. The lantern's glow flickered. Outside, the forest rustled, and inside the quiet cabin, something unspoken began to take shape, delicate and undeniable. As she closed her eyes, trusting him more than she had trusted anyone in a long time, Kalen felt a promise form in the stillness, one he hadn't dared to voice yet. But morning would come, and with it, the question of what their closeness meant. Morning arrived as a soft glow through the cabin windows, brushing the room with pale gold. Kalen woke before the sun had fully risen, the kind of wakefulness that came from instinct rather than rest. For a moment, he stayed still, unsure if the night before had truly happened or if it had been a quiet dream shaped by longing. Then he saw her. Lyra curled on the couch beneath the shared blanket, breathing slow and steady, her dark hair resting gently across her cheek. She looked peaceful in a way he rarely saw, unguarded, fragile, almost luminous in the quiet morning light. And for a heartbeat, Kalen let himself simply watch her, grateful she felt safe enough to fall asleep here. He stood carefully, making sure not to wake her, and moved toward the small kitchen to heat water for tea. The generator had kicked back on sometime during the early hours, humming softly in the background. He poured the warm water into a mug and exhaled, steadying the swirl of emotions inside him. Last night had shifted something. He felt it like a new pulse under the surface. But he also knew the weight she carried, and he didn't want to rush her into anything she wasn't ready to name yet. Behind him, a quiet voice said, "You're up early." Kalen turned to see Lyra rubbing sleep from her eyes, her expression soft but unsure, as if she wasn't quite certain how the morning would change what the night had begun. "Did I wake you?" he asked. She shook her head, pulling the blanket around her shoulders. "No, I think the sunlight found me." Kalen handed her the mug. "Tea?" "Yes, please." Her fingers brushed his lightly when she took it, and though the touch lasted only a second, it sent a warm ripple through his chest. She sipped carefully. "I can't believe I fell asleep here." "You needed rest," he said. "I'm glad you felt comfortable enough." Her eyes softened. "I did, more than I expected." The words hung in the air, gentle but meaningful. She stood slowly, wrapping the blanket closer as she walked toward the window. Outside, a thin layer of morning mist floated over the treetops, turning the forest into something dreamy and unreal. "It's beautiful out there today," she murmured. Kalen joined her by the window, leaving a respectful amount of space, but staying close enough that their shoulders nearly touched. "Storm coming tonight," he said. "A quiet one, but enough to make the ridge glow." Lyra smiled faintly. "I like storms. They make everything feel more honest somehow." He nodded. "I feel the same." She turned her gaze toward him, something thoughtful flickering behind her eyes. "Last night, did you mean what you said? About waiting? About me not being a burden?" "Yes." The answer came easily, without hesitation. Every word. Lyra lowered her gaze, breathing out slowly. "I haven't let myself trust many people since things changed in my life." He didn't push. "You don't have to explain." "I want to," she whispered. She looked up again, emotions stirring beneath the calm surface of her expression. "After my father passed, I tried to shoulder everything alone. I didn't want to rely on anyone because I thought it would make the loss feel heavier. I thought needing someone would make everything harder." Kalen listened, his chest tightening. "But last night," she continued softly, "you made it feel easier. Not fixed, just easier to breathe." He swallowed gently. "That means more than you know." Her eyes shone with a quiet vulnerability. Part of me is still afraid. That's all right, he said. Fear doesn't make you weak. It makes you human. Lyra took another sip of tea, letting his words settle. Then she stepped a little closer. Not enough to cross any boundary, but enough that he could feel her warmth. I don't want to run from people who care, she said. Not anymore. Kaylin felt something shift inside him, a gentle but powerful certainty. You don't have to run from me. Before either of them could say more, a sudden crackle of static echoed from the communication console by the far wall. Lyra startled slightly, setting her mug down as they both turned toward the source of the sound. The console flickered once, twice, then a distorted voice broke through the interference. Kaylin Virel, Lyra Kaylin, if you're receiving this, we need you back at the observatory immediately. The tone was tense, urgent. Kaylin's pulse tightened. Lyra's expression shifted, worry blooming across her face. What's going on? She asked. He didn't know, but the edge in the voice told him their quiet morning was about to change. The voice on the console crackled again, sharper this time, as though pushing through a wall of static just to reach them. Repeat, Kaylin Virel, Lyra Kaylin, we need you at the observatory as soon as possible. There's been an unexpected shift. Hurry. Then the connection dropped into silence. Lyra pressed a hand to her chest, steadying her breath. That didn't sound like routine data trouble. No, Kaylin said, already reaching for his jacket. It didn't. The observatory wasn't far, just a short walk along the ridge, but the message carried urgency that made the distance feel heavier. Lyra set her mug aside, pulling her hair into a loose tie before slipping her boots on. He watched her movements, noting the quiet determination forming in her expression. Whatever worry had touched her moments earlier had now woven into focus. You ready? He asked gently. She nodded. Let's go. They stepped outside into the cool morning air. Mist curled around their feet, drifting across the path like a living veil. The forest murmured faintly, branches brushing one another in soft whispers. Lyra walked beside him in silence for a few steps before speaking. Do you think this has to do with the anomaly we tracked last week? It might, Kaylin said, scanning the treetops. But I've never heard the team sound that urgent. Me neither. Their footsteps crunched on the gravel, the world around them slowly brightening as the sun began to rise. Birdsong echoed faintly through the trees, gentle and unaware of the tension building between them. Kaylin glanced at Lyra. Despite everything, she carried herself with quiet resilience, shoulders squared, gaze steady. He admired that about her every day. When they reached the observatory, they found the door already open. Inside, the main hall was dim, lit only by the glow of several screens flickering with shifting patterns of light. Zarin Elith, one of their senior analysts, turned sharply when they walked in. His expression was tight, his brow furrowed. Thank the stars you're here. We've been trying to reach you for 20 minutes. Kaylin frowned. The console in my cabin only picked up the message just now. Zarin shook his head. The entire ridge has been experiencing interference. We can't lock down the source. Lyra moved closer to the central monitor. What kind of interference? Zarin tapped a series of keys, pulling up a rendering of a pulsing waveform. The pattern moved like a heartbeat, steady but shifting in a way that didn't match anything natural. This started right before dawn, he explained, and it's getting stronger. Kaylin leaned in, tracing the frequency changes with his eyes. That's not atmospheric. No, Zarin said. It's coming from deeper, beneath the ridge. Lyra's breath caught. Underground? But the geological maps don't show anything unusual beneath this terrain. They didn't, Zarin said quietly. Until now. He switched the display again, revealing a subtle distortion, a faint but clear pocket of energy below the ridge's core. Kaylin exchanged a glance with Lyra. Something unspoken flickered between them, a mixture of curiosity and unease. "What are you thinking?" she asked him softly. "Last week's anomaly," he said. "What if this is connected? What if it wasn't a passing fluctuation? What if it was a warning?" Lyra's eyes widened slightly. Or a signal. The room fell silent at that word. Zarin exhaled sharply. "Whatever it is, the readings are intensifying, and we need both of you to help stabilize the sensors before the equipment overloads." Kaelin nodded. "Tell us what you need." While Zarin issued rapid instructions, Lyra moved toward the circular control desk, fingers flying across the interface as she adjusted settings with practiced precision. Kaelin joined her, syncing the secondary array while monitoring the deep spectrum channels. For several minutes, the room buzzed with focused urgency. Then something shifted. The waveform on the monitor steadied, then brightened, then pulsed with sudden clarity, as if responding directly to their adjustments. Lyra froze. "Kaelin, look." A new pattern emerged inside the waveform, structured, rhythmic, almost melodic in its formation, not random, not unstable, purposeful. Kaelin felt his chest tighten. That's a signature pattern. Zarin stepped closer, squinting at the screen. But from what? There's nothing on record that matches this. Lyra swallowed. It almost feels like it's reaching out. The room fell quiet again, deeper this time. Kaelin turned to Lyra, noticing the way her hands trembled slightly on the console. Concern softened his voice. "Are you all right?" She nodded faintly, though her eyes stayed fixed on the pattern. I feel like this isn't happening by accident. And after last night," she stopped herself, breath-catching. "Everything feels connected in ways I can't explain." Kaelin stepped closer, not touching her, but close enough that she felt anchored. "We'll figure it out, together." She looked up at him then, her expression a mixture of trust and fear. "I hope we're ready for whatever this is." He wanted to reassure her, wanted to tell her that no matter what the ridge was hiding, she would not face it alone. But before he could speak, the waveform flared with sudden brilliance. The lights flickered. A low rumble vibrated through the floor, and somewhere beneath the ridge, something awakened. The rumble deepened, rising from a faint tremor to a steady vibration that made the screens flicker. Dust drifted from the rafters above, and a low hum filled the air, an otherworldly tone neither mechanical nor natural. Lyra gripped the edge of the console, steadying herself as the waveform on the monitor pulsed with blinding clarity. "It's responding," she whispered. "It's actually responding to us." Kaelin stepped beside her, eyes fixed on the shifting pattern. "Or it's calling for something." Zarin moved between them, voice tense. "Whatever this is, we need to stabilize the equipment before it overloads. I'll reroute the secondary channels, keep monitoring the pulse." But even as he spoke, Kaelin felt something deeper, something almost intuitive, as if the pattern wasn't just a signal, it was communication. A resonance. Lyra seemed to feel it too, her breathing slowed, her gaze softening despite the tension in the room. "It doesn't feel threatening," she said quietly. "It feels like recognition." Kaelin turned to look at her. A faint glow from the monitor lit her face, and in that moment he could see the same strange calm that had begun building inside him. He stepped closer. If that's true, then maybe it's been waiting for someone to notice. Before she could answer, the hum crescendoed, sending a warm wave of energy through the room. The lantern on a nearby table flickered out. The overhead lights dimmed until only the gentle glow of the screens remained. Lyra drew a sharp breath. "Kaelin, something's happening." Zarin tried adjusting the controls again, but the entire system locked up. "It's bypassing every safeguard. This isn't possible." Then, just as suddenly as it had begun, the vibration stopped. The air stilled. The room went quiet. Only one thing remained active, the monitor displaying the waveform. And now, the pattern had shifted into something unmistakable, a series of luminous shapes looping together, forming a gentle, rhythmic spiral. Lyra's voice trembled. That looks like a response pattern. Kaylin leaned closer, but not random, not chaotic. It's repeating, like it wants us to understand something. Zarin wiped a hand across his forehead. Every instrument is at maximum calibration. Whatever that is, it's far more advanced than anything we've tracked. Lyra swallowed softly, her eyes reflecting the swirling light. Kaylin, do you hear that? He stilled. Amid the silence, a faint tone returned. Gentle, melodic, almost like a whisper woven into the hum of the equipment. Not loud, not frightening, just present. I hear it, he said. It almost feels, she hesitated, searching for the right word, alive. Kaylin looked at her, the glow of the monitor reflecting in her eyes. Emotions stirred deep inside him, wonder, fear, hope, all tangled together. Lyra, he said quietly, whatever this thing is, I don't want you facing it without me. Not now, not ever. Her breath caught at his words, but she didn't pull away. Instead, she stepped a little closer, grounding herself in the presence she had trusted the night before. I don't want to face anything without you either, she whispered. Before he could respond, the pattern on the monitor began to dim, slowly, gently, like a heartbeat settling into rest. The luminous spiral faded into softer pulses, then into a single steady glow. And then the entire system powered down with a soft sigh. Zarin stared at the blank screens. It's gone. Kaylin shook his head. No, it's not gone. It just completed whatever it needed to show us. Lyra folded her arms, steadying her breath. Then what does it want? The question hung in the quiet room. Kaylin turned to her, really turned to her. I think the ridge has been holding something for a long time, something waiting to be understood. And I think last night, your memories, your father, everything that brought you to my door, it all led here. To this moment. Lyra's eyes softened, filling with emotion. Do you think it's connected to us? I think we were meant to find it together. The truth of that filled the space between them, warm, steady, real. She reached out, her hand brushing his. This time, Kaylin didn't hesitate. He took her hand gently, their fingers intertwining in a quiet, earnest promise. The world outside the observatory seemed to exhale as the sun fully broke over the ridge. Light streamed through the windows, cutting through the last threads of mist. Lyra whispered, whatever comes next, I'm not afraid anymore. Kaylin squeezed her hand. You don't have to be. We'll face it side by side. Behind them, the equipment remained dark, but the room no longer felt tense. It felt like a beginning, unexpected, luminous, and unspoken in all the right ways. Zarin cleared his throat softly. Should we run diagnostics? Figure out what just happened? Kaylin nodded, but he didn't let go of Lyra's hand. Yes, but first, we take a moment. Lyra breathed in the morning air drifting through the window, her voice warm. A moment sounds perfect. And as the ridge settled into the new day, Kaylin knew that whatever mystery lay beneath them, whatever pulse had awakened in the depths, it had already changed their paths forever. But the most important shift was the one happening right there between them. One that felt steady and honest and long overdue.